大家好。大家好，我用中文讲欢迎词，然后鉴于我的嘉宾基本都是海外嘉宾，所以说我就换成英文。感谢大家留到最后，然后我们也不会讲非常长，但是我们尝试会讲一些有意思的问题，来让大家醒醒神儿。因为毕竟是到最后了，我能理解大家有点困。OK，让我找一下我的问题。Okay, let's start as please all of you introduce yourself and your company and say hi to our friends.
Okay, my name is Raymond. Came from Taipei, from HTC Vive. So I'm responsible for the product and strategy and also the Asia business. It's happy to be here and have the panel with all of you guys.
Hi, I'm Victoire. I'm looking after VR content at MK2. MK2 is a French company, a 45 years old French company that was involved and still involved in most of the fields of the film industry and started exploring the VR field a couple of years ago with the opening of a permanent venue in Paris. We are currently rolling out a network of venues in other countries. And since it's been 1 year, a year ago, we also launched a label dedicated to the international distribution of VR experiences.
Hi, everyone. My name is Clifton Dawson. I should say ni hao. I'm based in San Francisco. I run a company called Greenlight Insights. We're a market intelligence firm specifically devoted to virtual and augmented reality. I started 4 years ago when I worked as an analyst at another company and became very interested in this emerging medium and found that there weren't a lot of dedicated firms out there. So I started a firm to focus in on the evolving ecosystem. We have offices in San Francisco and Boston and have a dedicated team of young, passionate analysts who investigate business-related issues about the technology and produce thought leadership.
And hi, my name is Farsh Falla. I'm Director of Developer Relations for XR and Gaming at Samsung. I'm also from San Francisco, and I work out of our US office. In my position, we usually run all of the products that contain all the Rs in it, the ARs, VRs, and any other R that'll come out later on will be ours. Also, gaming sort of comes into our purview, as originally Samsung saw gaming as a part of VR, so that kind of bundled the two jobs together.
And I should introduce myself at the beginning, but I forgot. So this is Rebecca from VR Core, and we are focused on developer community, and we do publishing stuff too. I want to say welcome for all of you. So it's not that easy have all you here together. And my next question will be, I know that I think you both will agree, VR AR is changing very fast. And so I want to ask, from your perspective, how does the current VR market perform?
So for the VR market, actually, I think we've seen different status in the different countries. Even I'm heading as the Asia, but I think it's quite different from country to country. Like in the US, most of our product, the consumers actually are the general home usage consumers. They're gamers, they're playing contents at home. But in Asia, actually, we see different variation between the business usage and also the home usage. So for arcade business, actually, it's much popular in the Asia part. So that's why we work with like Bandai Namco. We have partners in China, and we build our own Vive Land at Taiwan as well. So for the past years, we see VR still growing, and from the number of sales number we have, it's keep growing, and then we see more and more industries, they start to adopt the VR to be part of their workflow. I think that's a very healthy status, since very soon VR is not, they use VR for VR. They use VR to improve their work efficiency. They use VR to do immersive media, and they use VR as just a general technology you're using. And that's the way we want to see in VR.
Well, on the content, from the content perspective, I feel that really in the past, 6 to 12 months, we've seen some really amazing and very diverse experiences being introduced. I'm thinking, for instance, of pieces like Lamb Child Superstar or Jack that was in Tribeca, pieces that had, extremely diverse, cinematic pieces, but also a lot of, more complex installations. VR using, mixing the technology with, immersive theater. And so I think it's a very exciting time as well to bring this new works to the audience. And we really feel that, in the past years, we've seen a rising and, quite permanent affirmed interest from many different types of locations and venues to have permanent equipment, which is really a good sign. How to make that bridge between, because in Europe, the in-home market is still at, it's the very early stage. So the offline market is a big, there's a big potential in the next couple of years to introduce the medium, and there's great experiences to many audiences. So it's a kind of a steadily growing market, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I've listened to both your answers, what really kind of stood out to me was that, when we're talking about the VR market, we really have to go kind of sort of market by market, sector by sector, and appreciate where there are, opportunities, short-term versus long-term for VR and head-worn VR in particular. Our business is in the business of sizing those opportunities and talking about what those growth patterns are. And I think from where I sit, there are reasons to be optimistic and there are reasons to be concerned. Some of the reasons to be very optimistic, of course, are the industry is growing in a lot of places. Sort of we peg growth at about 2.5 times last year. We expect 2.5 times last year. And there are new markets that increasingly look really, really interesting from an analyst's perspective because of the amount of economic activity that's happening in it, like location-based entertainment, as well as a number of the non-entertainment uses that you, Richard, were alluding to. So, in short, I think looking kind of market by market and sector by sector, and there are both reasons to be really optimistic and conservative.
Yeah, we're sharing a lot today. I think from a dev perspective, there's no doubt that VR has underperformed. I've only been at Samsung 8 months, as my previous boss at Unity, where I worked for a long time, John Riccitello, always says, he called it the gap of disappointment. But we think we're at the belly of that gap of disappointment area. Some of us here are old enough, like Raymond and me, to remember how this gaming got started to begin with. As a kid that grew up in the 80s, when games really came out, they were too expensive for anyone to afford them. We went to arcades. That's how you played games. You had to put money in it. That was because the equipment was too expensive. The code was too expensive. You couldn't have it. I think people forget a little bit that every new technology that came out went through this cycle, where at the beginning it was expensive. You went to some place to check it out. Eventually the price came down. Technology became better. Then you were able to afford to have it at home. This process takes a few years. We're really at the ground floor right now in VR. We still have a few years to go before this kind of picks up. Our numbers, both when I was at Unity and now that I'm over at Samsung, tells us sometime in late 2020 we'll reach the equation point. And that's a point where the devs will start seeing that really start paying off and back for them. The reason we believe in VR and we invested so heavily in it, even though there isn't the money right there to show today, is because it's the future. Future is immersive, one way or another. It just makes sense. We have more than one sense, and if you're going to deliver content to someone with more than one sense, you want to use the other senses. So it makes sense that this time it stays. And again, we're old enough to remember the first iteration of VR didn't work out so well. This time is different. Technology is too promising for any of us to let it go. We were talking about some of the enterprise uses of that. There's many, many, many uses that we can see in this. I mean, industries from Airbus all the way down are doing this right now. So we believe in it. I think hang on in there. Another couple of years, you're going to see a big growth in the VR areas. I think we're seeing that growing right now as more and more people and more cultures really come into the immersive technology. They get used to it. A lot of us have a sort of a 2D baggage that we bring with us into the 3D world. As the younger generation gets older, they don't have it. And that's when it really will take off.
Well, Farsh really gave us some golden sentence. Yeah. And I agree. I think it's a hard time for VR AR now, but it will be better and better. And my next question is actually for Victoria. I know arcade in Europe seems not that common, I mean, compared with China or Asia. From your point of view, what are the unique needs of users in Europe? And means what they like or dislike. Please share this unique part to us.
It's not easy to have a kind of a global answer for the whole of the European audience. I think their expectations differ a lot depending on the type of venue they're going to. So, for instance, at the moment Europeans are experimenting VR in different places like festivals, VR cinemas, new arcades. It's true that we don't have a network of arcades in Europe anymore. So it's really new, dedicated venue that are opening up. A lot of, also pop-up events and also galleries and museums showing immersive works. So depending on the type, of venue, I think the needs and expectations are different. People tend to look for, to be educated and learn if they go to like a VR booth in a public library or in a museum, for instance, if there's like a Klimt, experience at the end of a Klimt exhibit. They are very much into interactive and social experiences when they go to a dedicated venue. The venue that we have in Paris, for instance, one of the most successful pieces, that really stayed in the center for a long time was Life of Us. For instance, that's a multiplayer experience. So the needs are really, really diverse. Maybe two things that I don't know if it's specificities, but two things that can that we can really notice on the whole of Europe would be that they are really looking for high quality experiences. So if you put a headset on a person's head for the first time, because for a lot of the people that come to the venue, it's a lot of people that discover the medium. They're really looking for high quality content. If you put the headset and if their first experience is the resolution is not great and the whole environment, you feel the cables or it really will impact a lot their relationship to the medium for the following month. A difference also that I noticed with China, for instance, is that there maybe because it's linked to the recent history of and the development of theme parks and arcades, but they're not used and not comfortable with moving chairs that really move a lot, just from the exhibition point of view. The way the chairs are being synchronized for the same experience, it's going to be very different in China and in Europe. It's going to be much more softer. For the European audience.
Really glad to know that. I don't know they don't like moving chair. Okay.
It's like really dynamic movements when they're experimenting a VR. Like if it's in a theme park, it's different, of course. But when it's in a dedicated arcade or a VR center or museum, it's a real difference.
Same.
Maybe I can also talk a little bit about the arcade. So what we observed in the Asia or in like from China, for example, we see at the beginning there's lots of small arcades in China. So lots of like students or engineers, they kind of buy 1 or 2 vibes, they put a small space, they start to do arcade business. But after a certain time, and eventually, just like Victoria said, experiences determines how people come back. It's including the marketing, the whole consuming experiences with all the content and everything. And that's why we're seeing there's more and more mid to large size of arcade in China and also in Asia, because they can provide more selections for the users. They provide better quality of the contents, and also the whole equipment, the hardware equipment integrated is much better. And just like we sponsor VR Zone in Tokyo with Bandai Namco quite a lot, and they have the same idea, is they want to make a really good experiences, and it's quite expensive, but they want to provide the best experience to the users, so they become a spotlight for that area, and for the tourists, for the couples, they can go there for dating and for food. I think it's a very different type of kind of standard like small arcade type of business.
Yeah, I think when our company, when we've looked at this sector or channel for our research, what we've been sort of struck by is that there is a sort of dichotomy between the sort of small pop-up installation that really isn't not a sort of economically viable sort of business long term, and then the operators who do have multiple locations, large square footage, and I've been looking recently at the number of titles offered and the pricing, and you are seeing some operators that clearly appreciate what high fidelity interactive experiences can offer patrons, and they're charging a lot for it, and it's clearly a really good business. But there's also the opposite. There are a lot of cases where it is people who are using their at-home devices and giving very low-cost experiences.
Well, next question, I'm going to ask Clifton. We know that Greenlight has been focused on AR/VR research. So I want to ask you, consider what are the 3 most important parameters of the market, and why these things are that so important?
That's a great question, and I think this is a question that all of us could probably answer. I can give my personal point of view, and knowing that it is one person's view, and a lot of it is based on just sort of my gut as it relates to this industry. When I talk about, in particular, media and entertainment, I talk about immersive, local, and social as being really 3 important ingredients that I think you mentioned. The differentiator for this medium moving forward will rest on the convergence of those 3. And I think to your point earlier about when someone walks in and their first experience is not a high fidelity experience, that really speaks to the importance of having technology that is can deliver very immersive experiences, and we measure that. We track product models, and what we see is that there are twice as many product models that are coming out this year that have 4K resolution than there were 2 years ago. There are about 10% of product models have wider than average field of view, 120 field of view. I think what that tells us is that all of us, as we're thinking about creating content for the technology, is that we should be really, really thinking about what the next future state of the technology landscape is going to be, because it is improving and getting a lot better at delivering immersiveness. And then I think we've been talking a lot about social, not much for me to add there. And then social, my view is that it really is about what the younger generation, that will be the real champions of this medium, believe about the type of social experience that they're going to have, and that's something that probably can't be rushed. Yeah.
How about you? What's the most three important parameters?
I think it's still too early to really tell on the technology. Even when I was at uni or when I worked at Apple, I don't think anybody can really definitely say where VR is going to be 5 or 10 years from now. Technology is too young. There's a lot of brilliant people working at this. With the emergence of AI, ourselves, HTC, and many other manufacturers, which will run all of our VR very shortly within the next couple of years, and probably a lot of our other parts of our life, we don't know exactly where that's going to go. What we can do is make technology available, so whichever direction it does go, the technology is ready to go with it, as opposed to the other way around. I don't think us or HTC or Apple or any of the big companies are going to dictate globally what happens with this new immersive way of delivering content. Content has gone definitely beyond entertainment, beyond other things, and you can see we're already disrupting the entertainment delivery. If you look at Hollywood, all the mergers that are happening between the big companies, all the stuff that's going on down there, and for some of us that do business down there, you get the feeling that they're all nervous about what's going on. It's because the traditional model of delivering content has changed, and they're just trying to figure out how to come into the new world. It used to be you had to go to the studio in LA and pay them a lot of money for them to come distribute your content. Now you can come to any of our offices and put your content in front of millions of people almost immediately. We can notify 1 billion people at Samsung with a piece of content if we wanted to. That, I think, has not filtered down through all the content that gets created. The quality of content is definitely important. It's nice to see some bigger companies committing to delivering better content. I think this is the first year I saw AAA companies really go after not VR as a demo, not a 20-minute, 30-minute thing, but a 7-hour game, a 5-hour game, games that are 40 hours long. I know one company's working on. And as that goes forward, I think we'll see what comes out. So I think there's not just 3 things, there are many things in VR. It's immersive, right?
Yes, but I still want to say, what's the most important? I know there's many points very important. Just choose something.
Access and price point. We still think the access and price point is too high. It's kept VR very male, very white, very 25 to 49. And that has to change. And I think that shows in the content that's available in VR. To be honest, content is really geared towards that market. And as more and more people come in, more and more countries and cultures that enter into this market, I think we'll see a widening of that and a lowering of the entry barrier into that side. Anybody who's got an older parent, my mother is 85, and put them in a VR headset, it's amazing just to watch them move around with it and almost fall off a couch. No, mom, sit, And I think that will become more and more normal in most countries soon.
Cool. Raymond, do you have anything you want to share?
So for me, right, I think social is very important because we're looking. I agree with Clifton. Like, if you look a couple sectors that are very important from the existing data, right? If you look the recently most popular game like Cyber, it's an IP. It's immersive, but also VR chat is very popular because it's social. So I would say these factors actually help people to engage with VR technology. But if you talk about how to get the VR into mass market, I think it's always a barrier for existing technology. Like, you need some setup, you need some price range, you need some, like, you need to put something on your head. All this kind of barrier to prevent this technology adopted, and the content itself needs to immersive or good enough to overcome these barriers to get people adopted. So I think this the way our technology company is going to do is to lower the barrier more and more and more, lower the price, lower the difficulty for the setup, lower the difficulty for the wearing experiences, and also bring the higher characteristic to the device. But in the developer side, that will also encourage them to bring more different type of contents into this platform. So I think it's a collaboration between the hardware, content, studio, everybody together to drive this technology through.
Feel free if you have.
Yeah, no, I would
information.
agree with all of your answers. Basically, if I must choose three of them, the pricing of the technology is definitely an important parameter. The social aspect, like on the content side, there are a lot of parameters, but like social is a very important one. Content that is developed and thought for the medium and not just think of a game in VR, like a traditional game in VR or a traditional documentary in VR just because it's more immersive, but using really the technology to create new type of narrations and storytelling. And maybe a third parameter, more on the offline market would be, that will happen I think in the next few years, but to have some kind of standards in terms of the distribution channels of the experiences, the technical specs of the content, the platforms, softwares, all these different layers that makes it a bit fragmented at the moment and tricky for distribution. I think a really interesting thing that we're seeing at the moment, it's been quite a while, but I think there's much more dialogue today between the different parts of the industry and between basically like creators and everyone between the creator and the audience. And I think I've seen a lot of projects in development that are from the very beginning thinking of different formats to be able to address different location and audiences, because it's still a very small market in reality. So
Can I also ask your opinion, because we start to heard about the price quite a lot from different areas, but even internal our teams, we have lots of discussion. But you see, we have different experiences starting from Carbo, just $1, and you got Oculus Go like $199, and PSVR and Rift. So what's actually the price range you're thinking is the sweet spot, like actually, because like we have $1 device before, right? So what's actually the balanced way to get a correct price?
How we were looking at it was that not just the price of the thing, it's a total price of getting in VR. The $199 in Oculus Go doesn't work by itself someplace. You still have to have other bits. All of our gear, unfortunately, needs something else along with it, and that adds to the price point where it's at. Also, then you need high-speed internet. That's not cheap. Then you need other things. Except the $1 cardboard, unfortunately, doesn't work on its own. If it did, I believe everyone would be in VR right now. We think if you can bring and that's a Samsung thing, if you can bring the total price below the $200 mark, that's when you'll see global adoption. We're still probably some ways away from that for us, and I think for many other people. Part of that is the price of chips, the chipsets, the technology that's behind it. The internet pricing has not come down far enough. Places where we would like to use mobile, unfortunately, are not fast enough yet, not to have the latency. While most Western countries are moving to 5G, where we'll see the latency issue go away, a lot of other countries haven't. So we're still a couple of years, I think, away from coming to that price point of the 200, maybe to 250 range, where you can get the majority of people in it. But we're not quite there yet. The total price of the package is still too expensive for a regular user to come into VR. Now then you have to go buy content. And we're also guilty of that. A few months ago, I actually proposed to some of our competitors. We have the technology in our servers to open it up to connect to everyone. Surprisingly, there was no takers, and none of them wanted to open their servers. Even though we're the largest in VR with many millions of users, we thought we'll put our users up front and connect them up. But I have a feeling at some point everyone will come around. When that happens, when we can connect no matter what headset you have to each other, that's going to be the other key point, I think. Right now, for example, my friend has a Rift and I have an Odyssey. We can't really play together. Yeah. And that should change at some point down the line. And I believe it will. In the next 5 years, we're going to see all the servers, all of that emerging into one.
And I think learning cost is a part of the cost.
Learning cost, yes. Yeah. So it's not pure just the device itself. It's including all the, even the bandwidth and everything.
Okay, so I have the next question for Raymond. We see that Oculus Go has performed well after it launched, along with more and more standalone headset on the market. How do you think it will affect the market? And for both content creator and hardware company, how should we handle with this changing?
I think it's actually really a good move to the whole VR industry perspective. If you look for the developers, you have more devices there, then they have a better way to monetize back. So before we reach the point, really like take off, we still need to get enough market for this developer to stay in VR. And also, I think it's very good price point that you can attract lots of people to get into VR. Before, I think the first step, Google has done a very good job to using $1 couple to tell people, okay, this is VR. So they start to take very minimal cost to learn the word VR. And now, Oculus gives them a much better way to experience the VR. I would say the experiences in Oculus Go is pretty good. So people can leverage these devices to see movies, to see animations, and that can educate them to seek for the better experiences. So this is, we see how different market, different segments, and we do think it's a good move. Of course, for us, it's another challenge, like we also need to think about how we handle this type of market.
Do you think standalone will more and more popular, more than PC?
At this moment, I don't, because from the price point, you have different segment, but if you look for what people want to do, the content itself, I think we have lots of discussion under, because you see some majority difference in the immersive regarding, especially for the computer-generated stuff between the standalone and PC ones. So that's some argument, even I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, I have next question for Farsh. We know even now Gear VR is still a popular mobile product. Some of my friends, they have Gear VR and they like it a lot. Well, some people say the mobile is the future of VR. Do you agree with that?
I think it depends what you mean by mobile. I think when we say mobile right now, somehow you imagine a phone nearby. When we think mobile, we think of VR you can take everywhere with you, yes. Not necessarily with a phone. That version of VR is the future. It has to be. Sometime probably around 2020 or 2021, AR and VR will merge back together. They should have probably done it earlier, but it will be around then. When that happens, you have to be able to take it everywhere with you. So by definition, it will have to be mobile. If it's not, then you're not delivering content at all times. Part of the reason why we invest so much in VR at Samsung is that, I mean, being one of the largest manufacturers of phones, we know 5, 8, 10 years from now, the phone won't look like that phone that's over there. It will be different. It will be much smaller. It will be somewhere else. You will not put it to your ear anymore. And we think VR, or a version of it, a future version of this immersive, is how you will do most of the things you want to do with that device. If we want to keep our lead in this market, we believe we have to be at the forefront of the other market to be able to deliver it. So yeah, so mobile is the future of VR, one way or another, with or without the phone. And hopefully without PCs or anything else to raise the price. We're hoping to keep the prices down.
Yeah. So maybe not mobile, it's mobility. Mobility.
Much better word, yeah. Mobility.
Like Ready Player One.
Yes, that's a version of the, if you actually go to the original book, before the movie got kind of soiled by the VR headsets that are out now. The book came out in 2010 before any headsets were out. If you go to the original, yes, that would be the future of it that we would envision, with everybody being able to connect to the same place no matter what device they had, no matter what price point their device was. And maybe you were the rich guy, had the best one, and you were a poor guy, had a lower quality one, but you should still be able to come together in this immersive virtual world.
Cool. Okay, I have another question for all of you. We all know VR is changing very fast. Many new things coming out. In the past 6 months, is there something fresh, like new business model or other things make you impressive?
The quality of VR has definitely improved this year. Part of it is the game engines. Unity, Unreal have gotten better. Part of it is the devs. They're getting more experience. They're learning how to do the mechanics and the polygons and the graphics and everything else that goes along with it. But I think what's really exciting is the next 18 months, not the past 6. I know ourselves, along with many of our competitors, we will launch many, many products over the next 18 months, starting late this summer. Some stuff you probably have thought about, and some stuff you just see in the movies that are going to be coming out.
Next 18 months.
Starting end of this summer. A lot of products are coming out. And I think that's going to be the exciting bit. Once everything goes wireless, once everything goes much faster, much better quality, much more immersive, we're talking much, much wider view angles than even the stuff that now you're seeing in the market, really to get into it. A lot of that development is being funded by enterprise, obviously. Enterprise business has been very good for VR. You know, we're tech guys, and normally you want to think, oh, we want to stick it to the man, but at the same time, hey, the man's money is kind of nice to make sure the devs get paid right now. And that's, I think, our main concern at most of the places, to make sure the devs make it through this little trough so they can get to the when everything takes off.
Cool.
I think I should probably try and find something that's different than what you've said. So something that has happened in the last 6 months that has been exciting for me. I think, you know, we've really started talking a lot about what sort of a social experience, a native social experience in VR can be, and the diversity in that. You know, and we're starting to see experiments with it. I think a lot of the avatar-based stuff that we saw over the last 6 months is really exciting to me. I think interaction, some of the features that are, you know, that will soon be widely available in a lot of HMDs, making for interactions that are much more native through avatars. You know, better sort of mechanics, facial expressions, representations of avatars. I think a lot of those developments over the last 6 months get me very excited, because it will change the, you know, the value equation for someone who's a consumer. That it will be not just a, you know, medium for entertainment or for productivity, but also truly for communication. And that's really, I think, exciting.
Victor.
Well, your two answers kind of, you know, combine is kind of what I wanted to say. No, but yeah, I mean, it was what I had in mind, you know, in the past 6 months, really on the entertainment side, what I really was impressed with is, you know, this, you know, extreme rise of the, you know, quality of the content that's being made, which from a distribution and, you know, exhibition point of view is great news, because then, you know, you can, well, you can start charging for, you know, you can charge and find a better, you know, price point and business model for, you know, the venues. It's not, you know, it's where, you know, it's, I think we will see, you know, more and more, you know, social, like, you know, experiences that are including, you know, more and more people, and that's really, that was a conclusion that we very, very easily had at the venue about, like, the reactions of the people when they engage into, you know, an experience with different people. It's, you know, it's super exciting for them. So the raise of the, you know, quality of the content makes it, you know, very exciting for us in terms of, you know, distribution and exhibition, because we can deliver better, better pieces and update also the programming on a more regular basis. Last year was, kind of a struggle for many venues to, work on the programming because of, the content available, and it's on the production side, it has been really, really quite intense, in the festivals of 2018 so far.
Yeah, I think for the past 6 months or the past couple, like the past year, we think like for enterprise side, we see really from the beginning we need to tell the enterprise what VR can do. But in the last 6 months, we see lots of enterprise, they have really adopted the VR. So I remember back to 2016, there's only few film festival with the VR, maybe starting from Tribeca. But now it's getting more and more popular. You'll see some immersive media come to the...
In most festivals now.
Yes. And also, I think in lots of the categories, even the design, the B2B side, we see it's getting more popular. But for consumer side, we still notice the IP plus social as like key factors to drive the attention. But for the next 6 months to 18 months, since we're starting from the phone company, we also look at the 5G. We look for the experience. How can you get the mobility, but with this high immersive together? I think that's the reason why we're also talking the 5 reality. We think with the 5G and VR combined, and maybe sooner you get AR included, so you have different using scenarios, but you can leverage similar devices, but in different locations, and with the really high quality. I think that's what we're also seeing for the next year or two. That's we need to really work hard to get that point.
The reason I ask this question because all of you are professional in VR business. So I think if something can impress you, it means really special. And myself also can have something to share. Earlier of this year, I go to Germany to join EFM. And I do see something new from a Europe company. They're trying to rebuild the VR content, to protect VR content. They can make original movie and VR game and mobile together. I can't talk very clear because I think it's still secret. But it do have give me a new idea. If this can work, it can make VR content more and more popular. Besides this, I just finished my visit go to Thailand. It's very interesting, although that country, VR in that country not that active, but still have many opportunity, especially in ad. To help product selling their goods better, it's make me impressive. And also, I have a bad example for impressive. Even now, it's 2018. Still, when I visit arcade, they still selling that. I don't know how to speak that in English. 大摆锤和过山车. Help me. Yes, it's too old. Why? So even VR is many proof now. They're still selling the oldest content, not the good content to customer. I don't think that should happen. It's make me really impressive. Okay, so we have the last question I want to ask all of you. Please give one advice to who is still working in AR VR. Consider you represent for the company or the background or country. Give any important advice to the people in this business.
Well, for the startups or for the developers, I think to the point where we can see the big spike for the consumer launch, I think eventually you see all the contents where they can be successful is because they are immersive enough. So I still think you need to get really a high quality content. It's not necessary to be high quality content can be successful, but the successful content must be immersive. So I think this also gives lots of discretion. Like even we talk to the content developers in Japan, they ask all the details, they try every details just to make sure the content is immersive enough. I think that's really the suggestion I want to talk to developers. You need to think about the content itself and really get it immersive and for all platforms and connect it to as many platforms as possible because this is the time you need to get survive for the next year or two. And I think that's a better way to wait the turning point.
Yeah, and to bounce back on what you just said, producing VR is, expensive, of course. So an advice would be for creators to really try and look at co-productions and the different, leverage the different categories of, investments that you can get through these, international co-productions. There are some, public fundings, for instance, in several countries, in Canada, in France, and working in between different, studios worldwide makes it easier, I think, to build, a sustainable, strong, finance plan for a project, and then, give a bit more, enhance the ambition and then, therefore the quality of the content that's being created. So, yeah, look at international co-production.
Clifton?
So I think, my general advice would be, keep your fixed costs low so you can survive. Also from the perspective of, content developers in particular, I'd say, pursue, both traditional and non-traditional distribution. So, obviously the stores are an important first step, but there's a lot of momentum in channels like, different sectors of location-based entertainment, and so, pursue that and develop for those channels, develop a strategy for those channels. I think that might be a short-term way to, expand the audience size and potential revenue for a title.
I guess if there's one word of advice is don't give up. You're Wozniak and Jobs in a garage, in your mom's garage eating a ham sandwich and just trying to make it right now. It took them years to get where they are. It's not that far away yet. It's only a few years left. A couple more years and you guys will appreciate that you stayed in it. Keep doing it.
I have only one advice. Find your local partner, because the different country have different cultural background and the different maybe law, right? And also the different situation. If you find a really trustable local partners, really help. And since right now AR VR market size not that big, have to consider international market, and one team can not do all work. So just to find the right partner will help. See? So we actually already over time, but I still can save like 3 minutes for QA. If any of you have questions want to ask, okay.
Thank you. My question was for Victoire. So basically, after you said that all soon, like we will be able to take our headset everywhere in our pockets, then I guess it will be really easy to watch VR content everywhere. Then as a distributor, I guess it's going to be hard to tell people to come to your venues to watch movies.
On the long term, I have no idea how this will go for the LBE market, but on the short term, I think for a few years, there's still a lot of, expansion that are, that will be, even if there's a, adoption of standalone headset, and even if it gets wide, with the very rapid rhythm of technological innovation, we will always have, I think, in the coming years, some technologies that people will not afford, and they will come, I think, to location-based to have different experiences that what they can have in home. It can be the setup, it can be many different things, but I think that we will keep to this two, location-based has still quite a nice, glowing future for a few years. Beyond that, yeah.
Is that answer good for you? Yeah. Are we still have someone want to ask a question? No? Okay, then I think that's all. And thank you for all of you here, and thank you for listening to us, and thank you for you all sharing.
Thank you.